Welcome to the first episode of Kabbalistic Mystic. My name is Ovadia Batat and I'm your host. Now in this episode, we'll deal with one simple question. What is the tree of life? Now you won't need it for this episode, but if you want to see the tree of life, you can download a diagram from the show notes. And those are available on kabbalisticmystic.com. Just click podcast at the top and you can find the show notes there. They contain links to the various books and other sources that I'll be referencing. All right, let's start. So what is the tree of life? So simply answered, and especially for those of you who never seen it or don't have it in front of you right now, the visual representation of the tree of life, the way we recognize it is, it's a geometrical diagram. And it has 11 circles in it. And they're called in Hebrew Sphirot, which means counts. Okay? Now, we're just going to call them spheres. And not just because the word sphere means a circle, but because the dictionary will tell you that the word sphere originated from the Latin word sphera. And I personally have a strong suspicion that this Latin word originated from the Hebrew word sphira, referring to a single circle in the tree of life. So there you have it. Now we have these 11 spheres, or Sphirot, but we also have 22 lines connecting them. Now, these spheres, these lines, this diagram is just, again, a visual representation of what we decided, how we decided to show the tree of life. But in reality, the tree of life is a lot more than just a diagram. It's an abstract, yet powerfully practical template that outlines the structure, the dynamics, the components of the entire universe, as well as a single atom. So it can use to explore, investigate, meditate upon the nature of every object, entity, or group of items, if you will, in the universe. Let it be, a collective set of physical, social, mental, or even emotional phenomena. In other words, it's not only a blueprint of what was already created. The tree of life is a cosmic design that is intrinsic, inherent, integral to everything that is being created in this moment and will be created in the future. A newborn child, a newly formed relationship, a business, a thought. Just as an atom cannot exist without its nucleus, nothing in creation can exist without complying with a cosmic design revealed by the tree of life. Now that's a big statement, and it brings up a lot of questions, probably more than answers, no doubt. So here's 3 that come to my mind. Could there really be a cosmic template for everything that exists? Who created it? And even if such a template exists, wouldn't such a generic high-level blueprint lose its concrete hold on reality, as well as any chance to educate us or guide us, for that matter, as to any practical use? I'm going to start with this last question because in reality, it's the only one that can be answered intellectually. Now, it is true that the lowest common denominator is also the broadest, sketchiest, vaguest connective thread within a collective, right? If I tell you that I'm standing in a room full of humans, it wouldn't tell you much, as if I told you that I'm standing in a room full of middle-aged grandmothers who are playing bingo. And yet the lowest common denominator is often the most useful. A great example is light itself. As humanity is slowly discovering through the study of quantum physics, and I would say greatly boosted by the recent verification of the existence of gravitational waves, all matter is really light particles emanating from one single source. We're starting to really grasp that when it comes to science, right? What makes these light particles appear as a diverse plethora of solid matter trapped in time, confined by space, is its speed and pattern of vibration. The lower the vibration, the more solid the matter is. The higher the vibration, closer matter is to the light. And this is why nothing can move faster than the speed of light. It's the sole ingredient within the soup of our material universe. That is, it is the lowest common denominator for all matter. And even though it's the lowest common denominator, and even though that it's still shaded in so much mystery, I think it's clear to all of us that this particular fact will eventually carry dramatic practical implication for humanity, right? So just like light is a template for all matter, the tree of life is a blueprint for all experienced phenomena. So when first introduced into our awareness, a template or a common denominator for cosmic creation means very little when it comes to what we face on a day-to-day basis, right? The question, challenges, desires that we have in our lives every day. But it's like looking at a topographic map for the first time. I think that's the analogy I want you to think about. So if you've never seen one before, to the inexperienced eye, the map's going to look like nothing but colorful drawing full of squiggly lines, right? Numbers, letters. And we might immediately try to find where we are. That's what we do when we see a map. And we naturally desire to cultivate some kind of a personal connection with the map, right? A point of reference that would deem it practical and, more importantly, emotionally relevant to us. That's what we do as humans. But to the experienced eye, the colors, contour lines immediately reveal the nature of the terrain in question. Elevation changes, land types, distance, much, much more. Similarly, the more we study the tree of life, the more comfortable we become in knowing how to apply it to our immediate experience. And just like the practical use of a topographical map expand as we get familiar with it, well, we can camp, we can hunt, fish, we can even do urban planning. So does the uses of the tree of life increase as we learn to navigate life with this cosmic map of creation in the back pocket of our intellect. But still, how could that be? How could one template, as simple or intricate as it may be, serve as a map to every phenomena in the universe? It just sounds impossible. And two possible answers come to mind. One is spiritual and might satisfy the abstract thinker. And one is logical and would satisfy, I believe, the inquisitive nature of the intellect. Now, in essence, these two answers are one and the same. They're two sides of the same coin, if you will. And they can be summarized by the following phrase: as above, so below. So let's start with the abstract or spiritual answer. We were created in the image of our Maker. Now, when we say we, it's the royal we. It includes all that was ever created. Let it be a rock, a plant, an animal, a human being, or even a thought. The image of the Maker reverberates throughout creation. It is intrinsically stamped within every object or experience. This image is represented by the tree of life. The bottom sphere, or Sphirot, is really the top Sphirot of whatever's next to be emanated, created by the creation that came before it. In other words, when one looks at the tree of life, one is looking at one single link in a never-ending, ever-expanding chain or branches of a massive, infinite tree. A tree of all that exists. A tree of life. Now, if the tree of life represents a relationship, say, between two people, their offspring will be represented by yet another tree, right? That makes sense. That's easy to comprehend. But also the home that they've created, their experiences, their challenges and triumphs. If the tree represents the human mind, then every thought produced by this mind is molded by the blueprint of the tree of life. When it becomes a word, the word is molded by the same blueprint. When the word becomes an action, it is too created by the same template. As above, so below. If we track back everything in creation to the original source of the tree, we end up at the exact same place. It doesn't matter from what phenomena you start, you're going to end up exactly the same. All road leads to Rome. And that place is the original source of creation, where all light emanated for the first time in the image of the Creator, whoever that Creator is, or what it is, regardless of what belief we have, right? And that image is represented by the tree of life. Now, Hebrew wisdom calls this initial originating life Or Ein Sof, light with no end. The original creation is called Adam Kadmon, the original first product of creation in the image of its maker, the one who preceded all other creation. And that creation, Adam Kadmon, is metaphorically and anthropomorphically depicted in the Hebrew Bible as Adam in the Garden of Eden. You can look at it metaphorically. You can believe that it really happened. It doesn't matter. That's Adam Kadmon. That's the first person. Now, you and I are also very familiar with the physical phenomena associated with this initial moment of creation. So if we take it out of the metaphor, the originating point of our light, because scientists have named it the Big Bang. That was the spiritual answer to the question. Remind you, the question was, how could it be that all phenomena in the universe follows one blueprint? Now, one way the intellectual answer can be found is by reading a book that I really enjoyed myself. It's by Michael Talbot, and it's called The Holographic Universe, The Revolutionary Theory of Reality. I found the holographic universe to be an excellent source in intellectually summarizing what really is, I would say, an overwhelming evidence to the fact that the universe is a collection of mirrored phenomena. I owe it a personal expression of gratitude because this book was a book that initiated my path as a conscious seeker. I was an atheist at the time, and I found it fascinating to discover that there was, how should we say, a method to the madness after all. That there might be a grand design for what modern science claimed to have developed randomly through the, through the hands of evolution. Now, if Talbot's book shows us evidence for these reverberating patterns, that the universe, the entire universe, is really a repeating set of patterns that are based on the same thing, the tree of life reveals the design of those patterns. Now, those of you who are interested in understanding this better, I'm sure will somehow get their hands on the book. I'm sure it's in your local library. If not, it should be. But in short, the theory is beautifully articulated by the following analogy. And it's somewhat taken from the book as well, at least part of it. So let's see, how do I start? Do you remember the holographic message that Princess Leia, and that's not in the book, that's just me, right? That Princess Leia sends to Obi-Wan Kenobi. R2-D2 was that little robot projected in Star Wars, that little blue holographic message, right? We can do this today. This is not just, science fiction. We can do this today by shooting laser beams into a holographic film onto which the image was previously recorded. So the way to record the object, let's say it was a vase, okay? So the vase was recorded to the film in the exact same way. You shoot lasers to the vase, and the lasers reflect from the vase onto the film and record the vase into the film. Now, when we later project the image, the lasers reflect the light patterns back from the film into a three-dimensional object just floating in space, a hologram. Now, the interesting piece is that you don't need the entire film to project the vase. If you take a holographic film and cut it in half, and then cut it in half again, and then cut it in half again, the entire vase will appear in midair upon projection by these lasers, which means that the entire vase is recorded in every area of the holographic film. It's mind-boggling, but it's possible because the film does not capture the vase itself, but rather the visual component of the vibration, the light vibration that is reflected from the object. And this light vibration repeats itself endlessly and everywhere as the image was originally projected and recorded onto the film. That's the nature of light. This interesting nature of light, this single component really constructing our experience of all matter in the universe, manifests itself in infinite configurations into a phenomena of matter represented by space and time. But in reality, all that is known to us differs only by the infinitely unique manifestation of the universe's two building blocks. The first one is light particles that matter is made of, and they're uniquely represented by the density, that is the speed and pattern of vibration of these light particles. And the second building block is the conscious experience of that phenomena, facilitated by our five senses and processed by our brain. In other words, you might simply say that we live in a five senses holographic experience, with our perception of matter in time and space being literally only that, a perception. Now, it's as real can be. I'm not saying that this is not a real reality. There is nothing more real than this. But it's only real since we perceive it to be. That is, nothing exists without consciousness to experience it. In order for something to exist, you must be conscious of it in the first place. The tree of life is simply a pattern by which all phenomena is expressed and experienced by our consciousness. It depicts 10 abstract, absorbed characteristics of all emanated light as it being perceived by our consciousness. And all these 10 abstract characteristics are all present, each and every one of them, in every object, every moment, every situation, every interaction, every thought that was ever produced and will ever be produced. So by studying the relationship between them, we can slowly uncover great mysteries about our existence, the nature of our mind, and much, much more. Now, there are many ways to study the tree of life. And regardless of the method one chooses, one must learn the legend of the map. Okay? You get familiar with the geometric structure of it, the various shapes, learn the meaning of each and every one of the 10 Sphirot, which we're not going to do in this episode. Remember, we're focusing on what is the tree of life, but we'll get to that in subsequent episodes. So one has to do that. One must learn the meaning of each and every one of them. One must investigate the 22 connections between them. So if the Sphirot constitute the body, the connecting pipes link them together, right? It's like the tissue. And one will have to study the various shapes, patterns, variations that all these shapes form. Now, this is analogous to learning the letters and basic grammar of a new language. So if you learn a new language, you're going to have to do that, right? But in order for you to really understand the meaning of words formed by these letters, to construct meaningful, useful sentences in this new language you're studying, you're going to have to speak, read, or write it that is connected with an experiential knowing, just like that topographic map, right? We try to connect it to us. It's the same with the tree of life. You must tie it with some kind of a selected objects or a collective of objects in the universe so that you can associate an experiential knowing to the various symbols that the tree of life outlines. Otherwise, it's too abstract. In other words, if the tree of life is a mirror of all creation, then we must mirror something for it to have an experiential and consequently educational meaning for us. And the question comes, what shall we mirror as a subject for our studies, specifically in this podcast? Now, outside of this podcast, this is really up to the student. We're all different, and some of us are more analytical in our thinking, interested in the big picture, how things work, simply for the sake of knowing. Some of us are abstract thinkers. The very notion of having a structured, logical map of creation is ludicrous, is distracting. And instead, we explore the tree of life as a fountain of intuitive inspirations for whatever fit us in that moment. Many of us, I think most of us, are interested in a little of both. It's like a bell curve, right? Most of us will be interested in understanding the tree as a powerful tool so that we can hopefully apply it in various areas of our lives. In some cases, as an intuitive inner manner, and in some cases as a structured map, something logical to lead us out of trouble or towards a successful outcome of sort in whatever experience that we're having. Now, most of the books I know teach the tree of life as a reflection of the original creation. That is, a mirror of the entire known universe and beyond. Now, I found that to be an impractical object. Yeah, we might intellectually learn what is beyond the abyss, or if we're diligent, persistent, disciplined, we might even gain a deep experiential understanding as to the illusory nature of reality itself. We might even get a taste of illumination, right? I'm not taking away from the value of studying the tree of life as a mirror of the entire creation. But as the Zen phrase say, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Little good an illumination would do us, a momentary illumination would do us when we're back in the real world, right? We're going to be overwhelmed again by the loss of a loved one, by facing our addiction, loneliness, fear. And I don't know, when we find ourselves socially crippled, simply longing for love. Human suffering is vast. We seek, and we're all seekers, or else we wouldn't be listening to this. Because deep down inside, we feel that this suffering can be eased, that there's a rough diamond within that is waiting to be discovered, that our true nature experiences no fear, no real loss, and is never lonely. That regardless of our spiritual, religious, emotional beliefs, we are truly capable of experiencing unconditional love at any given moment without getting angry, without getting upset, without getting triggered. We're capable of grieving with joy, laughing, crying at the same time. We're capable of suffering with ease, shining our inner light even when we face the most difficult of circumstances. We know deep down inside that we're here for a reason, for a purpose, and we want to act on it. We want to remove all the obstacles that stand in our way of becoming all that we can be. That's why we seek. And so the tree of life must allow us to do just that, to take a step towards our true nature as a spiritual, all-capable beings, walking with our feet planted on this earth in the experience here and now. If it's not practical, it's not helping us. And that's why I find that it's best to study the tree of life as a reflection of our own psyche. And that's going to be the way we're going to study the tree of life in this podcast series. That is, the tree is a reflection of the individual leaf of consciousness that we identify with as the I, the self. This includes our mental and emotional bodies. Now, yes, the tree of life can be studied as a reflection of the physical human vessel, that is the human body, because it could be very practical. But I find that it's best to focus on the psyche because our thoughts and emotions directly impact our physical experience, and therefore by studying the psyche, we will get to influence the body. And as humans, our frontal cortex is what separates us from the animal and plant world. We are capable of self-awareness, self-reflection. It is our birthright. We're able to evolve ourselves as living beings by evolving our own consciousness. It is not only a privilege, it's a responsibility, an honor. Think about it. For the first time in human history, we're in possession of a tool that allows us to collectively progress the evolution of our species as a collective. The power to shift our own consciousness using psychospiritual analysis. Now, the Tree of Life gives us a template with which we can do it ourselves by simply reflecting on our day-to-day experience in the light of this ancient cosmic map that is a mirror of our own psyche. So when it's studied this way, it is very practical. We start understanding who we really are, why we react the way we react, why we get triggered, why we get angry, why we get sad, what we can do to avoid it. What other choices do we have? What is our relationship to the archetypal figures in our lives? Why are relationships so hard? Why do we fall in love? The Tree of Life answers that in some way or another. We still have to do the experiential work, and it's not like magically all disappears because we know intellect is not enough, right? But with slow and with constant practice, it becomes a tool that helps us live a better, happier, more fulfilling life. The tree allows us to better understand how we relate to the environment around us, the difficulties we're having with our relationships. It clarifies, celebrates human differences. To me, that's interesting. That's practical. The Tree of Life has the power to help us purify our inner desire. What do we want in life? It has the power to shed the masks that are hiding who we really are, our true nature. In other words, the Tree of Life guides us through the first and mandatory step of our psycho-spiritual evolution, the conscious shedding and dissolution of the ego personality. That is always the first step in the psycho-spiritual evolution. Now, a couple of quick words about what that means. I'm not suggesting that the Tree of Life can replace your therapist, your coach, or any other person or method that you are using for your behavioral development. Life, I think, is doing a great job in dissolving our ego without us doing much more proactively, right? But just like a topographic map can help us save time, effort, prevent us from getting lost maybe when navigating through the physical terrain, the Tree of Life can be used as a tool to help us reduce and ultimately eliminate our suffering. No more on that in subsequent podcasts, but for now, it's important to remember that studying the tree as a reflection of the psyche will allow us to understand our experience, positive or negative, and navigate our lives through them with ease. This is especially helpful at this point in human history, and I have to mention that. We are told, according to many spiritual traditions, that we're in a tipping point. We've reached, as humanity, a tipping point in terms of our collective consciousness. And in fact, according to the Zohar, the main book of Kabbalistic knowledge, we've crossed the galactic horizon in the year 2012 with the end of the Mayan calendar. I love when different traditions connect. Now, it tells us that we are soon to end the 6,000 years of the inner and outer masculine rule and enter the 7th cycle, 1,000 years of peace and inner feminine rule, when the so-called Messiah will come. Now, what is the Messiah? I don't know. But it's a prophecy that is shared across all three major Western religions. Now, what that means is yet to be seen, but it is clear, however, to both a spiritual and intellectual curious mind that is looking around and paying attention, that humanity collectively, our collective consciousness, is waking up. Let's zoom out for a minute, right, so we can get perspective. It was only 120 years ago that the concept of a subconscious was even first introduced by the first documented person to psychoanalyze himself. That was Sigmund Freud. 120 years. That is nothing. That is a blip in the entire span of human existence. That is, we're only starting to explore our own psyche using the unique function of our frontal cortex, our ability to self-reflect. Our mind is waking up from infancy to know itself for the first time. This is the time that we live in. We are about to discover what our true nature is. Our mind is waking up. This is the first step of illumination. People all around are awakening to the true nature of reality, the understanding that the ego personality is not who we really are, just who we think we are, as conditioned by events and circumstances and pattern of social and personal behaviors, right? The so-called consciousness movement, shadowed by its young sibling, I love this, the mindfulness movement, kind of like a little bit of a less spiritual name for the same thing, are really the fastest growing communities in the world. Many of us have become full-time seekers. I know that many of you listeners are full-time seekers. That is, we're consciously reflecting on our own behaviors and reactions to external stimulus in a relentless quest to find inner liberation. That's what makes a full-time seeker. Now, the goal, you might still be working, you might still be having a family, running a home, but you have this goal that is always there to free yourself from the inner suffering and tie the journey with the daily responsibilities. How can we live the life that we truly want, self-actualizing, becoming all that we can be, while remaining, for the time being, a highly functioning member of society? Now, those of us who have been on the journey for a while know that it's not an easy path. The path of the seeker is difficult. It is, however, a most rewarding one. It's difficult because it takes a lot. We have to look deep into our psyche, and in order to know the light, we have to really know and learn to love our shadow. Now, the tree of life is a tool with which we can better understand the patterns, recurrences, and unifying essence of human behavior, allowing us to slowly and surely progress the development of our own consciousness as a part of the collective. The tree of life is not just a template of what exists, has existed, or will exist, will be created. That's the outer layer, studied through the structure and relationships of the spheres. But when we study the lines that connect them, we discover an inner secret layer. a map of consciousness itself, a secret map for the macro and micro processes our souls go throughout thousands and thousands of incarnations on the path to inner liberation and illumination. In other words, the 22 ancient Hebrew letters that correspond to the 22 lines connecting the spheres are really a key for the conscious development of our own mind, body, and spirit. Now, this has tremendous implications for the committed seeker, those of us who believe in our ability to become illuminated in our own lifetime. So for the beginner conscious seeker, the tree can serve as a mirror for our thoughts, behavioral patterns, emotions, on the road to dissolve our ego personality and self-realize in the world. For the adept seeker, the tree is a detailed map on the road to enlightenment. Now, enlightenment's a loaded term, and we'll address the concept of enlightenment in one of our next episodes. But since the purpose of this episode is to answer the question, what is the tree of life and what can it be used for? I think it's important to describe its function not only as a tool for most of us, but also as a tool for the skilled journeyer, shall we say. So the 22 paths, or pipes, as referenced in Kabbalah, are connecting the various spheres in the tree of life, and they're describing a mechanism with which cosmic energy is passed down in our astral bodies. This energy is called the sexual energy. It's also called Kundalini, Chi, life force, prana, many other names. Depends really on the tradition. In Hebrew mysticism, it's called Ruach, which means wind. This energy is represented in the physical world as the air we breathe. So I think this is where the term got the wind knocked out of him came. Now it's described that this energy enters our astral body from the cosmos and filtered through us via various lenses, sort of like a prism, breaking the light into various colors. So the energy enters into our astral body, and it's ending up as the reflection of our own unique self in the world. So it culminates itself in some kind of an animated behavior. And it's described in scripture as the word. The word is our action, what we do and how we behave in the world, right? We're co-creators. We create in every moment. Let it be a thought, a word, an action, a physical phenomena, such maybe a piece of art. We don't need to do anything to use this energy other than to breathe. Breathing is almost the single requirement for us to sustain our physical vehicle and our presence of this on this plane of existence. Now, this energy enters our astral body through our cosmic mind and culminates in an expression of our existence that is in some kind of action in our personality. It is met in the physical plane by an earthly polarized expression of that same energy, a cosmic current that is drawn from the earth through our feet. Now, normally, the meeting place of these two energies, the one that we draw through our astral body, it's the inner energy going outward, and the energy that we draw from the earth, that is the outward energy going inward, the meeting place of these two energies is usually in the base of our spines, below the coccyx. The tree of life tells us that with diligent and disciplined work, we can manipulate this cosmic energy to our advantage. We can raise the meeting place of this physical and astral energies by purifying a set of energy centers known as chakras in Eastern tradition. First, we can raise it to the heart, known as the green ray energy center, and then to the pineal gland, the sixth chakra, or the indigo ray energy center. This action is known in the East as raising Kundalini energy. The result varies depending on the level of the purification of the energy centers in your body. In any case, some kind of a crystallization of the sand-like material in the pineal gland occurs, and a specific level of enlightenment is attained. Many believe, myself included, that there was one Rebbe who successfully used this ancient knowledge hidden in the tree of life to purify his energy centers and raise the sexual energy to crystallize his pineal gland, an action which resulted in his ability to control the illusion, control the five senses hologram, that is, become the creator within the illusion, completing all 7 steps in the process of enlightenment as described in the Hebrew tradition. Now, this guy's name was Rebbe Yehoshua ben Yosef, and he was later renamed by the church to Jesus. So, to the adept seeker, the tree of life thus serves as, shall we say, a detailed instruction manual explaining how to purify the energy centers and raise the sexual or kundalini energy in an effort to become enlightened. Many of the Eastern traditions are focused on doing the same thing. Now, the various paths represented by the 22 Hebrew letters each symbolize an aspect of consciousness that must be mastered on the long journey to enlightenment. So what we're saying is that if to the beginner seeker, the tree of life serves as a way to study the ego personality and to potentially continue our journey in the ego dissolution, to the adept seeker, the tree of life serves as a detailed, how shall we say, instruction manual explaining how to purify the energy centers, raise the sexual kundalini energy. It's really an instruction manual to human consciousness. And it can be used in effort to become more illuminated. Now, the various paths represented by the 22 Hebrew letters each symbolize some kind of an aspect on that journey. One way to divide them is 7 of the letters represent 7 laws of consciousness and the universe that must be understood and seemingly integrated and accepted into our lives. 7 other letters represents the 7 principles of consciousness that must be developed in us in full. And then 7 other letters represent 7 stages of enlightenment, which each seeker must go through, usually very painfully, repeatedly, until a particular level of illuminations have been attained. Now, that's 21 for those of you who have counted. And the 22nd letter is the potentiator of those 21 letters. That is, it's the expressed manifestation of all the other 21 letters. In other words, the 22nd letter, which is really the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph, is you. This concludes our first episode of Kabbalistic Mystic. And today we answered the question, what is the tree of life? We've learned that it's a template for all creation, reflected by 10 qualities or emanations that together balance every experienced phenomena into perfection. And we've learned that the positions, relationships in 22 lines connecting these 10 Sphirot hide a tremendous amount of knowledge about the nature of the cosmos, the structure of the human psyche, our emotions, the physical vessel that houses our soul, and even about the process human consciousness evolution works and the path to enlightenment. So I'm going to leave you with this week's reflection. And today it's going to be about our inner seeking. So as we said earlier, we're all seekers. There was something in us that caused us to be interested in the topic of this podcast, right? And listen all the way through. So what is it that you seek? Now, when you answer that question, I invite you to ask yourself, why is it that you seek what you seek? So continue to ask these two questions again and again. Continue to purify your answer as much as you can. What do you seek and why? And remember, it's okay not to know. Seeing the self in the eye of the self can be a painful experience. Be gentle, loving, respectful with yourself as you explore your inner world. Sometimes posing the question alone can reveal much about your own state of consciousness and inner intention. I want to remind you that I welcome your questions. You can submit them on Kabbalistic Mystic Facebook page, on Twitter, via email. All these methods are accessible via www.kabbalisticmystic.com. I hope you enjoyed this episode. This show is free, and the only way I can sustain, grow, and continue it is with the support of listeners like you. So iTunes ratings and, of course, constructive reviews allow me to gather more audience, as well as to get more attention from various publications and other media. I'm your host, Ovadia Batat, signing off. May you find love in every moment.